It's not the advice that helps. It's asking the right questions.
Mm.
And you'd be amazed at the power of a well-targeted question. Right? And what I'm looking to do is I'm trying to get the person to discover the solution for themselves.
Yeah.
My real core interest these days, and been for the last 15 years, is how do you grow organisations very efficiently and effectively from New Zealand to international market, right? And I've been a kind of a pioneering advisor inside NZTE on it, and been working with like 1,000 plus companies in terms of creating programs that have impact on that. And one of the greatest issues we've got is leadership, obviously, because if we have great entrepreneurial leaders, then we can grow companies and solve all the problems and everything else. So having a deficit of leadership is actually a really big issue for us. And we started this program called Fresh Thinking, which is like a 2 or 3 hour session that the subject of which is the explicit design of the organisation, and the target is obviously the CEOs and directors of the company. And I've done 250 of these things and as a prototype, and constantly iterated them and learned a lot about it, right? And the first thing, this idea of mentorship, you can have an extraordinary transformational impact on people as a mentor, okay? But I want to start with the first and greatest mistake that's made by mentors is this thing called advice. And I have this thing where I never advise anybody what to do or say you should do this or whatever. One, there's no possibility in any way, shape or form that you can possibly understand in a short time the context that a person faces in their leadership role. And when people give advice, they normally give advice from their own frame of reference, which isn't the same. And the other thing is that a lot of advice that's received, there'll be a whole lot of barriers to it. Like, for example, people it'll be emotionally uncomfortable for someone to go to that place, so they'll have to say, oh, that advice must be bullshit because, whatever, I feel badly about it, whatever. The other thing is the person who's receiving advice most likely is getting 10 different conflicting loads of advice from 10 different contexts and 10 different unrelated people, right? So what you've got to understand is that the mentee is responsible for the design of their own leadership, okay? And it's an intensely personal thing for them. And it's going to be a function of where they are at and what comfortable and emotional, being they are. And it's going to be a function of the particular situation they're in and their strengths and weaknesses and their people and other resources around, all sorts of things which you can't possibly hope to know. Right? So the way that we manage these mentoring sessions is that behind the session is a kind of framework which is what I call an axiomatic framework. So just all that means, a fancy word, it just means that it's a framework nobody can argue with. It's like completely obvious to anybody that it's true, right? And so what I need to do in those sessions, I need to be able to be a super amazing listener. And when you're a super amazing listener, what you're doing is you're not interpreting what you're hearing. You're just trying to hear it as it is. And you're also not just listening to the words, you're also listening to the body language and the different reactions between people in the room and all that. Now, you can't possibly listen to that level of complexity without something to organise your thoughts, right? And that's what I mean about this model. So I've quite a model I've refined over the last 15 years. And it's actually a model that's taken from the discipline of design. Okay, so we say, well, as a leader, what we're doing, really, we're kind of chief of design as a leader. And what we're doing is we're sort of making design decisions around our leadership all the time. And we haven't got time probably now to talk about the model, but what I'm doing when I'm listening to the situation is one thing I'm doing a lot of listening, but what I'm also doing is going, well, where does that sit, that person model, because what I want to do, it's always in my mind, is I want to be able to leave that person with a breakthrough, okay, in their leadership. Because what happens when you have a breakthrough is it's incredibly rewarding. If I can help someone have a breakthrough in their thinking, get to a new level of performance, that's a highly rewarding mentorship session, right? And the thing is, everybody's at a different part on their path, and they've all got different pressures. So what's really important for me is to listen hard enough to know where's the likely breakthrough for this person. Okay? Now, the other thing is that we're most likely going to be talking about things, that are logical, and you can sort of demonstrate that here's some design choices you have, and you might have some choices that but there's these ones you don't know about. And here's a way of thinking about what design choice might be better for you. Right? You can do that. But also you've got these emotional issues, like with people trying to deal with leadership problems that are beyond their emotional capacity to deal with, right? Like they're actually fearful of the outcome. And in that situation, it doesn't matter how much logic you deliver, it's the emotional fear that is in play, right? So what I'm looking to do is go, well, look, where's the access point for breakthrough? And if there's an emotional fear issue and everything in there, then the focus has to be on that, because if someone's emotionally fearful, there's no amount of coaching on design choices about where you are in your situation that's going to help. So I use a number of techniques in the sessions, which I think are really, really important. One thing is I never judge people. Like I always want to talk to them like it's a peer-to-peer. In other words, I'm not saying I'm an expert, so look at me, how good I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what you should do. I'm saying, clearly I bring something to the table that's different to you, but what you've got at the table is different to me. I don't possibly know what your situation and context is. But when we get together, we're going to find some cool things together that are new and different, It could be a breakthrough, right? And so no judgment. I'll spend a lot of time up front making it safe for that person, right? Even to look bad, there's going to be no judgment. I use humour. Well, it depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of assume that everybody has quite a high level of emotional attachment to what they do, and that their own competence and their own feelings as a leader or a good technical person, whatever. So what I find is it's not the advice that helps, it's asking the right questions.
Mm.
And you'd be amazed the power of a well-targeted question. Right? And what I'm looking to do is I'm trying to get the person to discover the solution for themselves.
Yeah.
But what I'm really doing is just asking the right question.
Yeah.
I might tell some anecdotes that are relevant. A long career doing a lot of shitty things, So I've got some good anecdotes that'll help. And what that does is it allows them to look at situations that are analogous to the situations they're in, but in a detached way. Like, okay, that gets me away from my emotional fear, and I can see this analogous situation, what happened, and I can see that the guy I'm talking to is still alive and perfectly comfortable about talking about it. So it's not that bad. It's perfectly normal. And, I've got to just harden up and get used to taking shit like this. And, I feel okay now,